Remember to subscribe if you are new to this channel. Story every 2 weeks. Same time and place. Let's get in the story.
As rain falls over New York, a lonely editor discovers unexpected love, proving that the right person can change everything. Beneath the Brooklyn Rain. Beneath the Brooklyn Rain. The rain started just before midnight, turning the streets of New York into rivers of reflected neon and shimmering taxi lights. From the tall windows of her apartment in Brooklyn, Naomi Carter watched strangers hurry beneath umbrellas while jazz music drifted softly from the speaker near her kitchen counter. Rain always made the city feel lonelier. At 32, Naomi had built the kind of life people admired from a distance. She worked as an editor for a respected Manhattan publishing house, earned enough to afford her small but beautiful apartment, and spent weekends in cafes reading manuscripts while sipping expensive coffee. But admiration was not the same as happiness. The silence inside her apartment had become louder over the years. She poured herself another glass of red wine and looked at the blinking cursor on her laptop. An unfinished manuscript sat open on the screen, but her attention had drifted hours ago. Her phone buzzed. Still awake, the message read. It was from her best friend, Elena. Naomi smiled faintly and typed back, "Unfortunately. You need a life outside of books. I have a life. You have fictional people." Naomi laughed softly under her breath. A second message arrived immediately. "There's a rooftop jazz lounge in Manhattan. Go out. Meet someone handsome." Naomi rolled her eyes but stared at the message longer than she intended. Maybe Elena was right. Maybe she was tired of waiting for life to happen inside her apartment. 20 minutes later, Naomi stood in front of her mirror wearing a black dress she rarely touched. It hugged her curves elegantly without trying too hard. She added silver earrings, touched up her lipstick, and stared at herself critically. "You're overthinking this," she muttered. Outside, Brooklyn smelled like rain and wet concrete. She pulled her coat tighter as she climbed into a taxi heading toward Manhattan. The city glowed beneath the storm. New York at night always felt alive in a way nowhere else did. Steam curled from subway grates. Traffic lights painted the pavement in shifting colors. Somewhere in the distance, sirens echoed like background music. The rooftop lounge sat atop a hotel near Soho. Warm amber lights glowed through the windows while jazz floated into the rainy night. Inside, the atmosphere wrapped around her instantly: soft saxophone melodies, quiet laughter, clinking glasses, low conversations. Elegant without being pretentious. Naomi found an empty seat at the bar and ordered a bourbon cocktail. "You look like someone trying to escape something." The voice beside her was smooth and calm. She turned slightly. The man sitting next to her looked to be around her age, maybe a little older. Dark skin, sharp jawline, neatly trimmed beard, and intelligent brown eyes that studied her carefully without arrogance. He wore a charcoal coat over a black turtleneck, the kind of effortless style only certain men could pull off. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "That obvious?" "A little." "And what exactly do I look like I'm escaping?" He smiled slightly. "A long week. Possibly loneliness." The honesty of the answer caught her off guard. That's either impressive or dangerously confident. "Daniel Brooks," he said, extending his hand. She shook it. His grip was warm. "Naomi Carter." "Nice to meet you, Naomi Carter." The jazz band shifted into a slower song while rain tapped against the rooftop glass. Daniel lifted his whiskey. "So which is it? Long week or loneliness?" Naomi exhaled softly. "Maybe both. New York is good at both." There was something comfortable about him almost immediately. No forced charm. No rehearsed flirting. Just presence. "What do you do?" she asked. "I own a photography studio in Harlem. Mostly fashion and portraits." That explains the confidence. "And you?" "Book editor." He nodded thoughtfully. That explains the eyes. The eyes? You observe everything before deciding how you feel about it. Naomi blinked, surprised again. You always analyze strangers this much? Only the interesting ones. She laughed despite herself. Hours slipped by more easily than she expected. They talked about books, music, terrible subway experiences, favorite restaurants, dreams they once had at 25 that looked different now. Daniel told stories with warmth and detail. Naomi found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't in years. At some point, she realized she had forgotten to check her phone. The rain outside became heavier. You know, Daniel said, leaning slightly closer so she could hear him over the music, you smiled more in the last 10 minutes than when you first walked in. Maybe your analysis skills are improving. Or maybe you needed someone to see you. The words settled quietly between them. For a moment, neither spoke. The city lights reflected in the glass behind him, framing his face in gold and blue. Naomi felt something unfamiliar stir inside her chest, not excitement exactly, but recognition. Like meeting someone who already felt strangely important. Daniel glanced toward the rain. I should probably let you get home before the storm gets worse. A small disappointment touched her unexpectedly. Probably, she agreed. But neither of them moved. Finally, he stood and reached for his coat. Let me walk you downstairs. The hotel lobby was warm compared to the sharp chill outside. Rain hammered against the glass entrance doors. Naomi hesitated. Looks like I picked the worst night to come out. I'd argue the opposite. Their eyes met. The silence stretched gently. Then Daniel stepped closer, close enough for her to catch the faint scent of cedarwood and rain on his coat. I'd like to see you again. Simple words. No games. Naomi felt her heartbeat quicken. I'd like that too. He smiled slowly, almost relieved. They exchanged numbers just before her taxi arrived. As she slid into the back seat, Daniel leaned slightly toward the open door. Good night, Naomi. Good night, Daniel. The taxi pulled into traffic, but she kept looking back until he disappeared into the rain. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became part of her routine in ways that felt effortless. Morning texts. Late-night phone calls. Dinner dates that lasted until restaurants closed around them. He took her to hidden jazz clubs in Harlem and tiny bookstores in the village. She introduced him to quiet cafes in Brooklyn where she liked to edit manuscripts on Sundays. With him, New York transformed. The city no longer felt cold or exhausting. It felt cinematic. Alive. One Saturday evening, Daniel invited her to his studio. The building sat on a quiet Harlem street filled with old brick architecture and glowing streetlights. Upstairs, the studio was spacious and intimate, filled with framed black and white portraits. Naomi wandered slowly through the space. His photographs were beautiful. Honest. Emotional. You make people look vulnerable, she said softly. Daniel watched her carefully. That's when they're most real. Her gaze moved to a portrait of a woman laughing while tears ran down her face. That one's incredible. She had just ended a 10-year relationship. Naomi looked back at him. You captured heartbreak? I captured truth. The room suddenly felt quieter. Daniel stepped closer. You know what I like about you? He asked. What? You pretend to be guarded, but you feel everything deeply. Naomi's breath caught slightly. No one's ever accused me of pretending. That's because most people don't pay attention. He reached up slowly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered lightly against her skin. The touch sent warmth through her instantly. You're beautiful when you stop overthinking, he murmured. Naomi looked at him for a long moment before whispering, then maybe you should distract me. Daniel kissed her gently at first. Soft. Careful. The kind of kiss that asks permission instead of taking. She melted into it almost immediately. Months of loneliness, stress, and emotional exhaustion unraveled inside her chest all at once. Her hands slid against his coat while his fingers rested at her waist. The kiss deepened slowly. Warmth spread through her body as rain tapped softly against the studio windows. Daniel pulled back just enough to rest his forehead against hers. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that." Naomi smiled faintly. "You could have done it sooner. I didn't want to rush this." The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. She kissed him again before he could say anything else. This time, there was less hesitation. More hunger. More emotion. Daniel's arms wrapped around her carefully, pulling her closer while the city glowed outside the windows behind them. For the first time in years, Naomi stopped thinking about the future. Stopped worrying about heartbreak. Stopped protecting herself from possibilities. She simply existed inside the moment with him. And it felt dangerous in the best way. Winter arrived slowly over New York. Snow gathered along sidewalks and fire escapes while Christmas lights appeared across the city. Naomi spent more nights at Daniel's apartment than her own. His place overlooked the Hudson, filled with photography books, vinyl records, and warm lighting that always made the space feel intimate. One evening, Naomi sat wrapped in one of his sweaters while he cooked pasta in the kitchen. "You know," she said, sipping wine, "I used to hate winter in this city." Daniel glanced over his shoulder. "What changed?" "You." He smiled softly but didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over and kissed the top of her head before returning to the stove. Small gestures like that affected her more than grand declarations ever could. Later that night, they lay together on the couch beneath a blanket while snow drifted outside the windows. Daniel traced lazy circles against her hand. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends. When was the last time you were in love?" Naomi stared toward the falling snow. 5 years ago, she admitted quietly. "We were engaged." Daniel turned slightly toward her. "What happened?" "He stopped choosing us." The words came out calmer than she expected. Naomi swallowed slowly. "At first it was work. Then distance. Then excuses. Eventually I realized I was fighting for something he'd already left emotionally." Daniel's expression softened. "That changes people. It changed me." He brushed his thumb gently across her hand. "You don't have to stay guarded forever." Naomi looked at him carefully. "And you?" she asked. "What about you?" Daniel leaned back against the couch. "I was married once." The answer surprised her. "For how long?" 3 years. "What happened?" "We loved each other," he said quietly. "But love alone doesn't fix timing. Or ambition. Or growing into different people." Naomi nodded slowly. There was sadness in his voice, but not bitterness. Just experience. "I think," Daniel continued softly, "people spend too much time pretending they don't need connection." The room felt warm and still. Naomi moved closer, resting her head against his chest. "And what do you need?" she whispered. Daniel tilted her chin upward gently. "This." Then he kissed her again. Slowly. Deeply. Like someone who meant every second of it. Outside, New York disappeared beneath snowfall while the city lights blurred softly against the glass. Inside, Naomi felt something terrifying begin to happen. She was falling in love. By February, they had become inseparable. Friends noticed it first. Naomi smiled more. Slept better. Laughed easier. Even Elena stared at her suspiciously during brunch one Sunday. "You're glowing." Naomi nearly choked on her coffee. "That dramatic?" "Yes. It's honestly annoying." Naomi laughed. "So this Daniel man is serious?" Her smile softened automatically at the mention of him. I think he might be. Elena leaned forward. And how do you feel? Naomi hesitated only briefly. Safe. The word surprised even her. Because that was exactly it. Daniel made love feel calm instead of chaotic. There were no games between them. No confusion. No emotional distance disguised as independence. Just honesty. One rainy evening in early spring, Naomi returned to Daniel's apartment after a brutal day at work. Manuscript deadlines had piled up, meetings ran overtime, and Manhattan traffic had nearly driven her insane. She entered exhausted. Daniel looked up from the kitchen immediately. That bad? You have no idea. Without a word, he walked over, took her bag from her shoulder, and kissed her forehead. Dinner was already cooking. Jazz played softly in the background. Candles flickered near the windows. Naomi stared at him. You did all this? You looked stressed this morning. Emotion caught her unexpectedly off guard. No one had taken care of her like this in years. Daniel noticed the look in her eyes immediately. What? She shook her head slightly. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. Later that night, they stood together near the window overlooking Manhattan. Rain streaked the glass while distant headlights moved through the streets below. Daniel wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. You know, he murmured against her neck, meeting you changed my life. Naomi turned slowly within his arms. You changed mine too. Their kiss was tender this time. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just full of the quiet intimacy that grows when two people truly know each other. And as the rain fell across New York City once again, Naomi realized something beautiful. For the first time in years, the loneliness was gone. Not because the city had changed, but because she finally had someone to come home to. Have you ever thought you will never find love again? And you find it in usual place? Let me know in the comments section below.